Madeleine Sami,
Oh,
welcome to Between Two Beers.
is this an ASMR podcast? Because that did something to me. A
Yeah.
little ka-ch.
It's 10 a.m, it's early, but we're going to crack one open, see how we go. You would have found your way into a few exports at Onehunga High School.
Oh, yeah. I tell you what. I mean, I wasn't a big drinker at high school. I was a bit of a nerd in that way. But export's definitely the entry beer drink, isn't it?
I feel like it was the beer of Auckland for a while there. It was kind of like the one.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first beer I ever had was a Lion Red, and my brother gave it to me, and I was like, I'm never, ever drinking alcohol. It's disgusting. Neck minute.
I think mine was a Rheineck, if I remember rightly.
Oh,
which
Rheineck.
was 2.5% blue can.
The place I had my 21st in Onehunga had Rheineck on tap,
Yeah, nice.
and I knew that was the venue for me.
Yeah, nice. Steve, do you remember your first beer?
Not first beer. I remember I was in America for 4 years and we drank a lot of Keystone Light was the beer of choice, and you'd get a 30 pack for like $15, and it was light beer and everyone would just drink themselves stupid.
Like a light beer as in light on alcohol,
Yeah.
light on carbs, because
Yeah.
it's confusing over there.
It is.
And
It is.
and here now,
Yeah.
Export have got the Ultra, which is the rig watcher for those that are looking to reduce their carb intake.
Nice.
Ah, okay, so that's a carb free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Got it.
low carb.
Low
I think there
carb.
are. I think
Low
by
carb.
definition there has to be some carbs in there.
Yeah.
Um,
Otherwise, you're just drinking air.
or
from a
water.
bottle.
Or water. Hayley Sproull, friend of the show, former
Yeah.
guest, said that you are constantly working on 5 different projects at once,
Mm-hmm.
which is high praise from potentially the busiest.
She
guest.
can talk.
Exactly. when we had her on, she talked about how busy she is. But right now, does it feel like you are that busy?
I've just had a really, really epically busy start to the year. I did like back-to-back shows. I shot Double Parked and acted and directed in that, which was like really quite full on through the flooding and the cyclones and everything else.
Through the apocalypse that
through the
Auckland-
apocalypse through the little taste test of the apocalypse that we went through earlier this year, and then went straight on to directing 2 episodes of an Australian comedy called Gold Diggers. Came home and then had a bunch of promo for Deadloch, Double Parked. So I feel like I've just been through like a little bit of a washing machine of work this first half of the year, and currently I'm in a writing zone. I've got a feature film script due in a month, so it's a bit more like chill. But I think, I think there's this like mentality that you get into when you start out in this industry, and it's really hard to break out of it. Like when in my 20s, it's like just take work, just keep it going. Because also the thing about this industry is like you never know what's going to kind of happen when things are going to line up. So yeah, I mean, I do have a lot of projects. I think it's probably why someone like Hayley does as well. I think it's possibly also undiagnosed ADHD. But yeah, it's good to have a few things on the go, bruh.
Yeah, I hear ya.
When you're writing a script, is there a discipline to it? Like, do you write in the early morning, or is it nighttime thing, or is it just when it sort of hits you, you get into it?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to, like and a lot of writers will talk about this. There's a lot of procrastination in writing. I mean, I'm here doing a podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Yeah,
this
thanks.
opportunity to procrastinate. Yeah, I think that sometimes it's when the inspiration hits you. Sometimes you got to walk around your house and pull your hair out for a little bit. Sometimes I like going for a walk, and then you'll get a burst of inspiration. You can sit there, and sometimes I'll get the inspiration in the middle of the night, and then I won't sleep for a couple of days, or I'm just on the cans of Boss coffee for a while. Yeah, there's no sort of real rhyme or reason, and I think sometimes the pressure of a deadline is really good. But yeah, it's kind of depends on the project and how jazzed you are about it. I'm pretty jazzed about the thing I have to write at the moment.
Nice.
So yeah, it's a sports film. I can't tell you much more than that, but it's exciting.
It's amazing what a bit of deadline pressure does. We always do quite a lot of research in the lead up to these, and I often get emails from Seamus at like 2:13 a.m. the morning that we're recording.
Very specific time.
It's like very last minute.
Yeah.
Adds a little bit of urgency to the work.
Yeah, totally.
I love also the thought, and you've given us a little glimpse already of getting 2 of New Zealand's best accent mimickers on a podcast. So you are very, very good.
Yeah.
Stephen likes to think of himself as an accent master, but
I've never claimed to be an accent master. You always to try to get me to tell show accents.
Yeah, why don't you give a
come on, mate?
Yeah, just do a couple.
No,
what's your speciality?
Well, I don't have. I've got two. I've got South African.
Do the South African,
and it always.
That's one of the hardest, I think.
I've only got one word, and it gets me in there, and it's absolutely.
Yep.
It's
absolutely. I don't think the South African accent is that difficult to do. You just you really just have to really lean into the character.
I don't really find it that hard.
Yeah.
You just get your few words like really hard.
Yeah.
So we've all listened to like South African commentary on All Blacks games since we were kids, right? So I feel like it should be in there.
Yeah.
We should all have one.
Played a lot of Jonah Lomu rugby growing up, so it's like Percy Montgomery down at the bottom.
Yeah.
I have to pause you there because Bill Beaumont is the commentator on that, who's Scottish. So I'm not sure how
memory's a funny thing.
Yeah, how you've gone crazy. But Steve, you told me you've recently introduced accents into your storybook reading for your kids.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I've got young kids, and I read them books at night. And I've recently asked me to do each page with a different accent, which is quite challenging.
That must be because you are accent master TM.
Totally.
Yeah, to them I am. But after about the third or fourth page, some of the accents get quite problematic. And I'm thinking like my Chinese and my Indian. Yeah, I don't.
And then they're going to school and being like, "Hey, my dad does your accent. It goes a bit like this."
Yeah, exactly.
No,
is doing accents racist? Because I did the South African once on a voice note to someone, and they came back. It was on a dating app, and they came back and said, "You can't do that." That date didn't go very far, by the way.
Yeah,
you can't do that. It's racist. I was like, I don't think that is. I think it's just.
I mean, I think there are
sound.
certain races that have had the piss taken out of them endlessly and have been punched down on a lot. I would say like Asian voices. I think there's a problematic like history of white people playing Asian people or blackface. There's all these kind of like there's certain I think we can all feel fine doing Aussie or doing white people. We can feel fine doing white people. I think if you're brown and you're from that place, you can do that accent. I can do an Indian accent because I'm Indian, so you get fucked.
Well, Russell Peters has made a whole career out of doing accents pretty much. His whole stand-up act is accents and takes on culture.
Yeah, but it's like a really interesting time in like comedy as well with all of that. There's like so much dialogue around what's appropriate now and how to be, I think for a long time comedy did punch down. There was a lot of comedians that did that. And then now there's a lot of like old school comedians being like, but we've always done that. Why can't we keep doing it? And then all the kind of new generation being like, be smarter with your comedy. You don't need to. So, and it's interesting where, like with someone like, what's his name?
Chris Lilly?
Eddie Murphy.
I want to pee on you. What's his name? Dave Chappelle.
Oh.
I want to pee on you. R. Kelly impression for that. That's the first thing that I think of. Him and his and then the story of Charlie Murphy playing basketball with Prince. I think is one of the best sketches of all time. But anyway, like someone like him who's like, controversial dude now because he's kind of got all these like. I don't know. It's a very interesting time in comedy, I think.
I found myself in a Madeleine Sami rabbit hole on YouTube last night, and whenever I send a link to Shay, it's a sign that it's a goodie. And it was one, I think it was something to do with the vagina monologues, and it was like the accent challenge, and it was you doing a Jamaican, like you come in and you've got to do a scene in a Jamaican accent. Fuck, it made me laugh.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's legit now. I'm like, well, what?
Oh, really? Is that?
Well, I don't know.
I've got a Jamaican in my locker that I pull out every now and again when I watch the West Indies play cricket. And I worked at Northern Districts Cricket, and I was commentating along.
Yeah.
People loved it. And then afterwards I was like, ooh, actually maybe everything isn't Irie.
Yeah. I don't know. And obviously you have to kind of view things through a lens now and be like, well, we all were in that mindset then. I think about some of the stuff from the early Office show, the British version. And you're like, if you watch it again, it's like there's some really problematic stuff now. But at the time, it was kind of revolutionary and, I think sometimes you have to view comedy like that as well and be like, well,
Yeah.
that was of its time, and some things date. I mean, you look at any comedy from the 80s with and they're all like coked up to the eyeballs and making fun of homosexuals and talking about taking a bunch of cocaine, and that's because they have taken a bunch of cocaine, and it's all about like the edgy comedy was talking about gay people, and it's like, well, you could cancel those people, you could just view that for the time that it was set in and like go, that was the set of circumstances at that time. And I don't know, I'm a gay, I still like Eddie Murphy and Robin Williams.
It's foundation piece is Eddie Murphy Raw and Delirious, right? Every video store just...
I was talking to someone about that the other day, because those videos, we used to get them out like sneakily, like Mum would go off to work or whatever, and we would just like get out Raw and Delirious. Those two specials are probably the reason I got into comedy acting, was Eddie Murphy and those two stand-up specials, because that was the first time I'd ever seen someone be like, just stand there, be so charismatic, be so bawdy and like rude and swear, but also just transform into character without anything, without costume change, whatever, and just so fully do the voices and be the people and tell the story. And that was the first. That was when I knew, like as a kid watching that I wanted to be an actor, I think, and swear.
Yeah, it's full of it. It's absolutely full of it.
We recently had Tom Sainsbury on the pod, and we had some success unearthing some of his early unusual jobs. And in our research, we've stumbled on a few that we'd like to talk about.
Oh my God. Okay.
I don't know anything about this, so it might go nowhere, but Xerox Warrior Princess at the Sky Tower?
Yes.
Is that a real job?
That's not a real job, no. I made my own costume out of tin foil and like little pie, I flattened a bunch of like pie casings that were made of foil for my like breastplate, and I was part of some like Auckland theatre sports thing. We're like, we get these couple of teenagers and pay them like barely anything to just take people up and down the Sky Tower when it opened. So I was a teenager, and we all like took the piss out of an icon, and I decided to I made my own costume, and I was Xerox Warrior Princess, and I just took people up and down in the lift at the opening of the Sky Tower for a little holiday job. Yeah. It was sick.
A play on the Hollywood Walk of Fame then, kind of parodying famous New Zealand people, or have I
don't know.
way
I
too
think
much?
that's what I chose to be. I can't remember what else anyone else chose to be, but I was Xerox Warrior Princess, and it was I think it was like a full school holidays, and I just was taking people up and down the Sky Tower. It was sick.
When a few years later, when you met Lucy Lawless and you were on Xena, did you let her know that you'd been Xerox Warrior Princess?
I think she found it very funny. I'm actually very good friends with Lucy now, and the legacy of Xerox lives on.
It's a shame. It probably predates kind of mobile phone quality camera days, so you maybe didn't have any photographic evidence.
I don't think I have any photographic evidence. There's probably something in the archive somewhere, but I don't know. It's so funny how like I think when my kid is 21, my kid is going to have like a photo for every moment of their life. You'll be able to put it together and just literally have a picture collage of watching them, like a video of watching them grow. Watch them age every day. Whereas for me, I feel like there's one roll of film from when I was like 2, and then there's a bunch of photos from when I'm like in my 20s, and then there's all that stuff in between. Like maybe some friends somewhere have got some like film of us on a holiday or whatever, but no.
Just looping back to Lucy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I got the timelines right, but was it when you were about 18 or 19 that you first worked with her, and she ended up like coming back to your flat, and like you had this worldwide superstar kind of like interacting with your teenage people?
Yeah. Who have you guys spoken to? God, you're getting the inside goss. Yeah. So Lucy and I did the Vagina monologues together for the Auckland Theatre Company with Danielle Cormack, and I was like pretty young. Living in a flat in Mount Eden. I didn't drive. and Lucy was very pregnant, and we just like, we bond, like I was in one episode of Xena. It was like the penultimate episode of the last series of Xena. And it was quite a big episode. They basically called it their Saving Private Ryan, but like for Xena. So there's a lot of action. We're like running along the beach, and a bunch of Amazonians are getting blown to smithereens. And I survived. My character survived. Tyro was her name. She survived. But I got to know Lucy, and she was in particular zone at the end of that shoot, I think, because it was ending and it was like a big deal. It was a massive show, that show. And then we did the vagina monologues together, and I didn't drive, and she kindly offered to take me home every night from rehearsals and from the show.
Every night?
Yeah, in her fancy car. I'm like, Zena's driving me home. So sick. And then we just became friends. We just like bonded. And she's a girl from Mount Albert. That's who Lucy is. She's always, and I grew up in Onehunga. So I felt very, even though we're like obviously different ages and very different experiences in life, essentially that's who she is. And she's one of the most like smart, down to earth people you'll ever meet. And we just became really close friends. And she would sometimes come over to my flat and just like sit in my room, and my cousins or like my friends would be like, hi Zena, and I'd be like, hi, and she's just so chill with everyone, and that's, we're still friends to this day, and she's still one of those people that would just call me up and be like I was out to dinner with my daughter the other night, and she was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I've taken my daughter to a flash dinner on Ponsonby Road. She's like, I'm coming, and she'll just turn up, and it's like, we sort of bonded through that time, but she's one of the best people ever,
Yeah, she's on our hit list.
Sounds like sounds like we've got an in finally.
Genuinely one of the most down to earth and interesting people. She's always doing something interesting. Like I'll be like, what have you been up to? And she's like, I just made this documentary, or like whatever. She's just, I just built a house on a farm somewhere, and I'm like, I've been doing some stuff for Greenpeace. I'm like, I've been protesting up a oil rig or whatever. Like she's always got something that she's doing. But she's she's one of the most like curious people, and her curiosity takes her into these crazy places, and she's always got an interesting story. She's the best.
Would Lucy Lawless's curiosity I can't speak this morning. Would Lucy Lawless's curiosity take her to play a Kinder Surprise egg at Auckland Zoo?
No. I feel like this was the same summer maybe that I played Xerox Warrior Princess. Look, when you start out in this job, guys, and listen, I've got a philosophy. I'm a hustler. I'll take whatever work I can get. Yes, for a time. I think it was one time, I think I didn't want to do it after that. I had to get into it was the middle of summer, Auckland Zoo. I had to get into a foam Kinder Surprise egg.
You were in, I wasn't sure how you played this.
Yeah,
so you were
legs
inside.
Out the bottom.
Oh, okay, sorry.
But in a white stocking, of course.
Yes.
And then the Kinder Surprise egg around you. And it stunk like the man that wore it before, and I'm pretty sure there were pubes in the foam on the inside that I saw.
You have to go and know those nude normally.
Yeah, it was horrific because it was so hot. So I was just like sweating up a storm. And then the kids are assholes, and they're just kicking you the whole time because they're like, yeah, of course I want to kick that egg. I mean, if I was a kid, I'd want to kick that egg too. So yeah, I did. I played a Kinder Surprise egg for a little bit.
Was it a promo?
No job beneath me.
Was it a promo thing? Like, were you handing Kinder Surprise eggs out, or
I can't remember. I think it was like I started out when I was younger doing a lot of improv, and the Auckland Theatre Sports was a company that would kind of train us up, and they'd get offers for work for promotional things. That it's an awards thing where you're walking around in characters, or you're going to the Zoom, being Kinder Surprise, or Xerox Warrior Princess, or sometimes we would do a, which was really fun. There was at the Maidment Theatre, there was a Sunday night improv show, and like 14-year-old me would get paired up with like Kevin Smith. You guys remember Kevin Smith?
Yeah.
He was an incredible improviser, goddamn god of a man, so handsome, and you'd get paired up with these older things just to kind of get experience doing improv with them. So that, in a way, because I never did drama school or anything like that, but like those experiences were like kind of my training. And I did a lot of like youth theatre as well, again, which was kind of like my training. So I'd do a show, I would rehearse up a show sometimes they were like in the winter school holidays or the summer school holidays. So I was just like a nerd for acting from a really young age. And, we did stuff like Auckland Theatre Sports, which was kind of like a really weird job, but there were these like American kids that would tour, and they'd come for a trip around New Zealand for like 3 weeks, and then at the end of their trip they'd be staying at some like hotel, like I want to say Quality Inn, but do we even have a Quality Inn? And then we would go and do improv for them as teenagers. So they're teenagers, we're teenagers, doing improv for them about their trip they just had around New Zealand.
Nice.
And we'd get paid for it. So I was just kind of getting paid for improv and acting, which is awesome because I kind of meant that I've never really had like a normal job. So it was like, it was a sick way to kind of get experience, but also like kind of be doing the thing I want to do, you know? I mean, not that I really I can't think that I'd even want to be a Kinder Surprise again.
No,
but
well, I've put myself back in 14-year-old me's mind.
Dangerous place.
That very dangerous place. Very self-conscious, very unsure about putting myself out into the world. The world of improv at 14 sounds like a scary, scary place to me. But were you fearless at that stage?
I mean, I'm one of 23 cousins, and we're all like, I say to people often, like, I'm not even the most talented, funniest, best person at entertaining in my family.
Yeah, it's Priya.
It's Priya. It's Priya. It's her. Get her on the show. But like, I just, you know, for some reason it just kind of clicked for me. But like, our family growing up was always like, we'd do shows, we'd do characters for each other. So that sort of set me up for doing that for other people out in the world, because it was like, that was my normal at home or at a family gathering. You know, there'd be a talent quest, or like my cousin and I, my one of my funniest cousins, Anna, and I used to pretend to be, when we were like 10 or 12, we used to pretend to be a European duo, a songwriting duo. That's a very elaborate story, but we were called Glass and Anya, and we would do silly accents, and we'd pretend to be interviewed by our other cousin Claire, and our other cousins would be sitting like they were watching Oprah, and she would interview us as Glass and Anya, and we'd talk about, you know, we'd split up for some reason, and it was about us coming together for the reunion, and we'd just do hours of just shit talking as this European songwriting duo, and then we'd make up songs, and like my cousins still quote back the songs that we sung to them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, back in the day. Yeah. So, you know, that's where it started, and then so it was a natural progression to do that as a teenager. And I still think I had the awkwardness of being that, but I just also knew I loved it at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
We mentioned Priya. We reached out to her just to help sort of paint a picture of Madeleine. We reached out to her. Fuck, she's funny. Like, say, oh, can you give us some info on Madeleine? She's like, fuck you guys. Do your own fucking research. What is this?
I can, but you owe me a crate.
Yeah. What can I give? What can I get out of this? Yeah.
But she did give us some stuff. So I want to... She actually led with what an incredible sports person you are, or were. Rugby, cricket, football, said pretty much anything you tried, and with Ducks Ludorum at high school.
Yep.
Ducks Ludorum, which I had to look up.
Yeah, I thought...
Not many schools... No, I thought every school had a Ducks Ludorum, but
Just a
no.
Ducks, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there ever like a potential, like how good were you at sport? Was there a potential gateway to professional sport?
It's so funny. So Ducks Ludorum, I love to lead with it, because I was like, I was the Ducks Ludorum of my school. I was the Ducks of sports. Yeah, I mean, I loved sports. I worship my older brother Dan. He was really sporty. He was a league guy and a rugby guy. And as a kid, you know, I'd just follow him around everywhere, and he'd be like, "You want to come up to the park?" And we lived off the back of my high school, and so we'd go up and kick a ball around, which I now realize was essentially like him kicking a ball at me and going fetching it for us. Yeah. I was like a little doggy for him. But I got good at sport from that, basically. And again, you know, my family is really sporting as well, so we'd often like start a family touch game or a family touch team, and so I was always kind of playing sport. And yeah, I just loved rugby growing up. I was that kid that would stay up till like 4 a.m. to watch, you know, the South African All Blacks test. You know, I was obsessed with rugby, as most, you know, Kiwis were, probably not as much anymore. So yeah, it's kind of like another thing that I just loved doing at high school, and I just would play. I just get into everything. Netball, not so much. I'm more into the queer sports, cricket, rugby. The first year I played rugby was the first year they bought rugby for girls into schools. So it was, I mean, I've often wanted to like write a film or something about it, because it was a free for all. Like, you know, boys grow up playing rugby through school, and they get technique taught to them. They get, so that by the time they get to 16, that's, you know, it's as safe as it can be.
Yeah.
The girls' game was like frightening, and you know, like but there was some, like we're all sort of like learning basically how to play rugby. We've all watched it our whole lives, but none of us have the technique. So we're getting, we're training, we're doing that, and then but you get into a game sometimes. I remember being, because I rather tactically decided I wanted to be a halfback, mainly for my size, also for the fact that I could get rid of the ball and not get tackled too much, because I'm always passing it. And I remember being like at a ruck, and like all the girls are piling in, and someone was like, "Oh, someone's got their boot in my face," and then all the other girls were like, "Someone's got their boot in her face." Everyone, let's just stop. Let's not hurt her, And I remember just being like, oh, but then and in the same breath, I remember like, and I still think I have an injury from this game. I remember playing this like St. James Cook High, like the girls out there, and them coming, and they were just like double the size of us. And I'm like, okay, well, this is going to be a chip and chase kind of game for me, because that was the only way I was going to get around not being tackled. And I, all the training my brother had put me through over the years, I was like, yeah, I'm a chip and chase gal. I was a soccer player as well, so I had the skills in that way. That was my signature move. I'd get into the 22, and I'd be like, get the ball from the ruck or the scrum and just kick over the top and catch it, and they'd be like, bam! And I did one of these moves against James Cook High, because these good girls are giants, so I'm going to get murdered. I chip and chase, and I'm like, I've got the ball and I'm running. I'm like, yeah, I'm heading towards the try. I'm like at about halfway line. I'm like, this is easy. This is so sweet. And I just get dragged back by the neck, like planted onto the ground. I still swear to this day that my shoulder is fucked from that one tackle. But this girl was just like sort of standing over me like, yeah, you weren't going to get away with that, motherfucker. And I was just like, this is pretty brutal. Like my mum couldn't come to the games. She just was too scared.
I love the idea of this for a TV show or movie or whatever. Like with the way that the women's game is so professional and so like highly managed now. Just that raw grassroots first year women's rugby was introduced into high school.
And it was cool. I ended up playing for Auckland secondary schools that year, and it was, but it was just I when I finished high school, I played soccer. I just felt like it was like a safer thing to play while I was doing acting as well, and I played for Western Springs United up until I was like 26, and then I tore my ACL, and that ruined the end of my career.
Wow.
Yeah. But we were playing. We worked our way up to Prem Division. We had a pretty motley crew of like people and a crazy coach. Most of the girls in my team were like alcoholic. They won't mind me saying this. They're mostly like alcoholic. Ex-professional tennis players, but also very good at soccer, and we worked our way up to Prem Division, and then that year we were like we were training a lot, and I injured myself in a social game, and that was it. I kind of stuffed up a few jobs after that, and I was like, I can't really afford to like do that now. Then I became a gym jock.
Yeah, with Hayley Sproull again, let the cat out of the bag that you are a gym junkie. Jacked, I think, was the term that she used.
Jacked.
Are you jacked right now? It's hard to tell with the Boston College jumper on. That
I sprained my ankle like a month ago, and so I've been like chilling out on the thing. But I just do because at the beginning of pandemic, because I was a Les Mills gal, and then I had me and my partner had a baby, and I was like, I don't have the time to get to a gym anymore. So I was like, got into this like body weight training stuff,
calisthenic stuff.
Yeah, just burpees at home, burpees on the deck at home, mate.
Flagpole hanging.
Yeah, and so I got into that, and that's kind of like my vibe now, because I think in this job, like often I find myself in a small space or in a hotel or like whatever, and I'm like, I love a routine, but I don't, want to get to a place and try and find a gym, and like I feel like it's time consuming. Whereas if I can just like do half an hour in a room and feel sweaty and great, then that's me. Then I find a mountain to walk up. It's great.
Nice.
I feel like there's a good little seg on the sport. So she continues, and you can choose which part of this you want to attack. But she says she makes a mean steak, and she takes really good care of her lawn, and she is really good at lending her little sister her cross-colours leather patch jacket.
Yeah, listen, she really wants that jacket.
Yeah.
She's not getting it. She actually texted me again about it this morning. She's like, I've told these guys now.
They're going to read it out.
Priya's hilarious. Like she's I've learned over time never to lend her anything because it comes back ruined. She's gotten better with age, but I still, the damage is done. The damage is done, But she often gets the hand-me-downs anyway. She's often like, she's the younger sister, so it all filters down to her in the end anyway.
That's her role.
Any Sami Sisters albums dropping again soon?
We just did a gig recently and it was awesome. We made one record together. We're joking, maybe we'll put one out every 10 years, but it's been beyond 10 years now. We love to sing together.
So the three Sami
sisters, yeah. We try to get the brother in, but he's not. He's an IT. He's a good singer, but he's like very shy.
And you'd have to change the name.
Yeah, it would be like the Cause.
That was where I was going to go.
Yeah, it would be like the Brown Cause. Yeah. No. We do have plans to record. It's been obviously life, and I get taken off into my job, and Angie's got her job, and Priya's doing her sort of stuff as well. But we did one gig recently. We were all like really excited, so I think we'll start recording some stuff soon, I reckon.
Yeah, I've heard on good authority that you're a pop music aficionado, and Britney Spears in particular. You've got like the Britney mic thing.
The Britney mic thing.
Yeah, mimic Britney's mic dancing.
Oh, I can. Yeah, I am a big. I've seen her twice. I feel a little bit sad for her now. I hope she's getting the help she needs, because whatever she's been through must have, it would have fucked with anyone. Don't you reckon?
Yeah. Stephen shared some of her latest social media stuff with me this morning, and I was like, "Ooh, that doesn't look like she's in a great space."
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they did to her for those 10 years, but I'm sure they absolutely, smashed her on a cocktail of various drugs to keep her from, keep her in their control. But I don't know. I stan Brit till the end. I'm like Brit for life till I die. But yeah, I love pop music. I obsess about music.
One of her dances popped up in my TikTok algorithm the other week. She was an amazing dancer. We're on a Britney Spears tangent, but like the way she moved, I couldn't remember her being so good at dancing. Did you copy her moves? Did you got that in
not so
your locker?
much I mean, I like to do voices. I like to mimic people. I do a good Britney at the karaoke, But yeah, she was an incredible performer back in the day. I think she's still an incredible dancer, but I think the style of dancing that she did, people have moved on from. We're into the sort of periscopal kind of dancing. It's a little less just a few spins here and there, and which is what it was kind of early 90s when Britney came out, and that was great for the time. But I think dancing has evolved, especially pop.
Just on karaoke, it's not exactly karaoke, but is the Julie Andrews Eminem mashup still part of your preparation for?
God, who do I tell that to? Probably everyone. I toured this solo show for many years, and often it was called Number 2, and I played 9 characters. So, and from an old lady to a young 7-year-old, and so my voice had to get warm. And often when I was at the Edinburgh Festival, you get into your venue 5 minutes before you get to do the show, and so you have to kind of warm your voice up. But over the years of touring that show, I was like, what's the fastest way to kind of make sure my mouth is warm and I'm able to I would often rap Eminem in the style of Julie Andrews. Hi kids, do you like violence? Do you want to see me stick 9-inch nails through each one of my eyelids? Do you want to copy me? Do exactly what I did? Try, Sid, get fucked up worse than my life is? My brain's dead weight. I have to get my head straight. It was like that.
That's incredible.
That's so good.
And it was a really good way of because you can do it fast, and it was just a really fast way of getting my mouth open so that I could get into playing these characters. But yeah.
That's really good. I'm glad you brought that up.
You're welcome. I've got those little nuggets every now and again.
I wanted to start painting the picture of growing up in Onehunga. It seems like a huge foundation piece in your life.
Yeah.
Raised by your mum all the time, predominantly?
Pretty much, yeah. My mum and my dad split when we were 12, so it was really pretty much mum and us in a house, 4 kids running around. Yeah.
Because you're fiercely Onehunga proud, right?
Yeah, I love Onehunga. It's such a good. I still live there now. managed to buy a house there somehow. And it was a good melting pot growing up. You know, like there was a lot of kind of, you know, my high school was just like full of every race, every type of person from every walk of life. So it just felt like a really good place to grow up, really. I've got a real fondness for it, Onehunga. I'll always kind of feel like I belong there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm interested because I'm a mixed race child as well, of an English father and a Solomon Island mother.
Oh, cool.
So I grew up in a household which had those kind of cultures blended. And then as you make sense of the world as a young person, you kind of go, shit, I don't really fit in this box and I don't really fit in this box, but you're able to fit across a whole bunch of boxes. Did you find that as well growing up?
Yeah, I think, and that's why it was so cool to grow up in that area, because there were a lot of kids like me. You know, there were a lot of kids that were like a mixture of like lots of different races, or so you felt at home amongst that group, you know, of kids at school especially. You know, it was a very, there were a lot of different races at my school. And I mean, my family, on my mum's side is Irish Catholic, and there's 7 siblings, 6 sisters, 1 brother. The 1 brother married another Irish lady, so that's the one white family in our family. And then the rest, 3 of them married Māori men and 3 of them married Fijian Indian men. So all of my cousins and I are half something, and either half Māori, half Irish, half Fiji Indian, half Irish. So, you know, just grew up in this mixed family. I grew up in this suburb that was like really mixed, and it felt, you know, I feel lucky, you know, when you hear about other people growing up in like small towns or whatever, and it's a bit harder for them. I feel like I was exposed to a lot of like different races and different people from walks of life. And I think, to be honest, for someone like me who, you know, I don't know, I've always loved doing voices and characters and stuff. I was always around great characters too, you know, like, so it was kind of in a way like a playing field for that early, you know, stuff for me, like making up characters and jokes and joking around high school.
I imagine you were able to draw from high school and family with some of the stuff that you do now, right? To draw back on those experiences of, I think you said one of 23 cousins. I imagine family get-togethers are kind of eclectic, loud, amazing affairs. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And often when I play a character, you know, my cousins will be like, oh, that's totally blah, blah, blah. Well, that's, and they're like, oh, you used a bit of da-da-da for that. You know, and it's usually, drawn from my family or my friends, for sure. No one's safe. Neither of you two are
Yeah,
safe.
we wondered whether Tom Sainsbury would come in and just take, because he's a master observer of people and breaking down their characters. So we're waiting for kind of a couple of podcast hosts to be on something that
it'll
he
be coming. You wait, it'll be coming.
down
that guy's prolific. He's like every day there's some. Yeah, he's so funny.
You've never wanted to dip a toe into kind of that social media space of filming and putting stuff out there?
I mean, sometimes I do. I don't know, like someone like Tom and like Chris Parker, they're so good at it. But I feel like it's one of those things that actually takes a lot longer. And I guess as
you're really busy too with all your projects on the go.
I'm busy, and I think if I had an idea for something I would. But I mean, it's kind of like what I do in my job anyway. Maybe in the future, I don't know. At the moment, I don't. I would say I don't really have the time for it. But you know, there's people out there that are doing like Tom. You know, every day when I open Instagram, it's just some other hilarious thing that he's doing. So I don't know, maybe.
Just moving back to the family stuff, and if you want to dodge this one, it's okay. But losing your father, I think you were in your 20s when you lost him. Did that have a big impact on your identity, or what impact did that have on your life?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty epic. You know, I was doing a play actually at the time when I found out, down at the Silo Theatre, which is now the Basement. And I mean, it's one of those things where you don't expect to be that young when that happens, and it sort of put me in like an existential kind of like crisis for a second, where it's like, you're like, oh, I had all these questions, I had all these things I wanted to know, and now I can't know them anymore. And I think that I often think about the lessons I learnt about myself through that time, and how they've filtered through into the rest of my life, like in terms of like grief and like dealing with grief at a young age, and dealing with grief through the rest of my life on other things. And I think I learnt some really big like life lessons having to go through that at that age, about holding on. Like my dad and I weren't necessarily like super tight, and after he's gone, I was like, well, what was the point of that? Like, and so I take that sort of lesson into the future for myself now, where I'm like, there's no point like holding grudges, or like, because you never know what's going to happen in life. And so, I mean, I think that, it sort of had a profound impact on the way I live my life now, and still live my life. And I still think back, I think, life is like really precious, and, you just ought to, I know there's no point kind of having unresolved stuff. I think that was kind of my biggest lesson from that time in my life.
Do you resonate with that,
I was
Shay?
going to say that's amazing insight, because I lost my dad, I think I was 28.
I was 26.
At the time, and 100%. We were, my dad was interesting. He was very English upbringing.
Yeah.
Brought up through the Second World War, where everything was rationed, and he had a real interesting outlook on life. We were close, but I know exactly what you mean around all of a sudden you don't have this person that you think, fuck, he's never going to see me grow up. He's never going to watch me go, through manhood. He's not going to see me get married, maybe. He's not going to see me have kids, maybe. But it's an odd thing, and I think you're right. I think your perspective on life and what's important really does change when you go through that at a younger age. And like I hadn't reflected on it until I'm sitting here listening to kind of the way that you've put that together, and it definitely hits home. And I think it's probably now why, like, I gravitate a lot to my friends' dads, and I always kind of look at family situations and go, man, like, you don't know what's around the corner and what's going to happen. Like, fucking bury the hatchet or make an effort.
Totally.
or
I'm
do
like,
anything.
That's I mean, I just find, I think I find holding on to resentment or anything like that with things, I just want to release that, because you just never know what's around the corner, and you never know what people are going through as well. Like, I don't know. I think I learned a lot about forgiveness through that process, and like, life's short. You just got to like, put good energy out there, and try not to let things make you bitter, and also just I don't know. I think resolving things is the way forward, because you never know, and you just never know what's going to happen. You never know when you're not going to have that opportunity to have that conversation. So have it, resolve it, get through it. Don't hold on to hate. Don't hold on to like resentment. I think that was definitely my biggest lesson that I still try to hold on to today with things where I'm almost like, what's the point of being pissed off at that person? Like, let's just have a chat about it and work through it,
Amazing lessons. Thank you for sharing.
Hey,
Yeah.
anytime.
Yeah.
DTC, brother. Dead Dads Club. With the DDC, any one of my friends that when their dad passes, I'm like, all right, we're DDC. We there is a sort of special kind of bond that happens, I think, when you lose a parent. And, like every time any one of my friends loses a parent, I'm like, it instantly takes you back to that feeling.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a big deal, it's a big deal.
Shout out our amazing producer, Ads, as well. He's a
DDC?
He's part of the DDC.
DDC for life.
Love it.
I got you. I got you guys.
Damn it, it's supposed to work the other way.
All right, so to move through the journey, so I'm not sure which order these came, but high school, Shortland Street, and Beer.
Yeah.
A monologue show called Beer.
Yeah.
Was that around the same time?
Yeah, basically I finished, so the whole kind of time that I'm at high school, I'm doing shows, I'm doing plays, and I basically got to the end of high school and I was like, I'm going to take a year off and try and do acting stuff, and then I'll go to uni or whatever. And all my friends were going to uni, and felt a little bit sad. Like I sort of, I was like, have I done the right thing? And then I did this monologue play called Bear, which was like a hit in New Zealand. Like I ended up touring it a lot, and we went to Edinburgh, And then in the same year, that same year out of high school, I did Shortland Street. So I was playing like a trainee doctor. I think I was like leveled up. I was supposed to be playing like a 26-year-old. I was 18, but they like straightened my hair and put me in like a suit and stuff. And yeah, I just was like, from that point on, I just was working in the industry, and I got to tour Bear for a long time, and I was on Shortland Street for about 5 months, I think, and I did like 2 months, and then I did a season of the play Bear in Wellington, and then I came back and did like another 3 or 2 months, and then but people remembered me from that. People have such a crazy memory for Shortland Street. Like, I went to Fiji like 10 years later, and the lady that did made my room up gave me a bottle of champagne because she loved me as Varney in Shortland Street. And I was like, I
was trying to remember the character's name.
That was like 15 years ago, but thank you so much. Yeah. I've done stuff in between. Yeah. And then, from that point on, basically, I did number 2, which was the solo show. And I just toured these plays for years and years and years. And and then, it was a kind of crazy start.
Are you an instant celeb amongst your peers when you're on Shortland Street at that age? Like, such a widely watched show. I imagine the younger demo sort of watch
it was a pretty big deal, yeah. It was a pretty big deal that I was on Shortland Street. And I remember, like, walking to my best friend's house from Onehunga. He lived in Ellerslie, and I was like, had my headphones. I think I was listening to the new Hole album, Celebrity Skin, at the time. And being like, this is it, Mads. You've made it. Like, it's all going to be, I'll probably be in Hollywood next year. Yeah. I'll probably be doing action movies with Tom Cruise. That's what I really thought. That's where the trajectory was headed. Yeah.
How do you find out that your Shortland Street role is ending? Did they kill you off, or did it just phase you out?
Did you get transferred to Central?
Oh, I did. I literally got transferred to Central. That is what happened. So I can technically come back anytime. Shortland Street, if you need me. I had I think I was like one of the first Indian characters on the show, and I had a love story with Rangi, and we were in love. But my parents, Blair Strang, but my parents, in the show wanted me. I had a schizophrenic brother that I had to look after. It was really stressful, and my parents wanted me to have an arranged marriage. So I loved Rangi, but I had to go off and marry my betrothed. And then they transferred me to Central.
Amazing. That's actually so good.
Well done.
But I'm honestly constantly surprised. There'll be at least one person a year that will recognise me from Shortland Street, and I'm like, man, that is going back some way now, because I was 18, and so that was like 98. I did that show.
That's funny, the amount of stuff you've done since then, and it's Shortland Street. Like,
that's crazy.
Foundation piece.
On Bear, I'd heard in another interview that there was like a sex scene in it. And you'd never had sex before, and you had to imagine what it was like?
Yeah. So there's a sex scene where basically we're standing on stage, and it's like you're watching. It's hard to describe, but it's like we're standing on either side of the stage, because the whole show was like monologue. So Ian Hughes, who played the male characters in the show, would stand up and he'd do a monologue, then I'd do a monologue. And the play was really clever in that as the monologues went along, you realise these characters are connected to each other. And so you're introduced to his character who works in a cinema, and then you're introduced to my character who's like a gym bunny. And then they eventually meet at the movies. And so you're sort of watching them, like you can see his point of view and her point of view as an audience. And then they have sex. And I was a virgin and hadn't had sex before. And it was a very hilarious rehearsal room with 3 awkward men trying to relate to me how the physicality of this scene might happen. And I really enjoyed them all kind of squirming and trying to find the appropriate language to describe how I was going to do this. I mean, I think I'd seen enough sex scenes in movies to kind of know. But it was a pretty funny show in that way. I had to do that play in Wellington. We had a season in Wellington at opposite. Oh God, I can't remember the name of the theatre now. Bravo, I think, was the cafe underneath. And it was out like closing night, and I was doing that scene, and I looked down, and there was a table, and it was like Ian McKellen, Elijah Wood, like Liv Tyler, the full Viggo Mortensen, the full cast of Lord of the Rings because they were filming at that point, and I'm like doing the sex scene in front of like Ian McKellen.
Sir Ian.
He loved the show. He bought me a Coca-Cola afterwards. It was sick.
Is that where Elijah Wood became enamored with you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because that's again deep research.
Oh, deep research. Yeah.
But was that your first kind of interaction with that?
Yeah, he came to see the show, and then he came and saw me do number 2 as well, the play, and yeah, we became friends. That end.
Yeah. For reasons we've already covered, Shay mentioned that number 2 was your favourite New Zealand film you've seen. You didn't see the play, but you connected with the family aspect of it.
Totally, same thing. It was like that. I didn't know it was a stage show beforehand, so that's on me. So my first experience of it was watching it in the cinema, which again, when I read the backstory, was like, how were you not cast in the movie? But that's a whole side story as well. But for the first time, it was like, fuck, that's my family on screen. Like the matriarch and cousins and everyone coming together. It was like a real watershed moment, I think, for brown people in the country to kind of see their culture represented for the first time. Did you feel that when you were doing the stage show? Because I understand, I think you took it to Mexico or something, and it was translated into Spanish.
I toured that show for years. I did in Jamaica, in Holland, toured Holland with that show. It was an amazing show in that it was like just a story about a family, 3 generations of a family, but it was like everyone could relate to it. The family was like a very specific Fijian family in Mount Roskill, in the late 90s. But it was like it translated because of my incredible performance, but also just the, people related to this story of this kind of dysfunctional family. And I would always be amazed at the reaction to that play because I'd be like, really? Are people in Mexico going to get this? That was probably one of the wildest shows that I did because I did 2 shows in this festival called the Festival of Cervantes, who's a Mexican poet. And they had this festival in this amazing silver mining town called Guanajuato, which is about 2 hours north of Mexico City. And it was a Spanish-speaking festival. So they translated the entire play into Spanish and had it projected above me as I was doing. And the play is just me. It's raw and delirious style. I don't change out of my costume. I'm wearing jeans and a shirt that says Sunny Fiji. And I just it's me in a chair, and I just transform into all the characters. So there's no like big glitzy like costume change just to help a foreign-speaking audience even understand what's going on. And I did the show in this like converted church. So it was this huge, beautiful old Mexican church with subtitles above me. It was crazy. But people, and I remember thinking like, oh, I'll do the show, but whether or not people connected or not. And they're all laughing and they're getting the jokes. And then afterwards, this girl comes up to me and she's crying. And there's a woman translating for her who speaks a bit of English. And she's like, she said that you were her grandmother. She saw her grandmother on stage. And I was like, okay then, the kind of power of that, play and the writing and the way people connected to it was awesome. And like, to do that and to be in Holland and have someone come up and cry and be like, that was my grandmother. And you're like, oh, it was pretty amazing experience for me as like a 19-year-old traveling the world and just getting to like do this show. And, I got to have an OE basically, but also I was working and, getting paid for it was pretty sick.
But to speak to your performance, because it is just you, like it must have been an incredible performance. Does it exist any, like...
I was incredible.
I'm blowing a little bit of smoke up your ass, but does that exist anywhere? Like a copy of
there's
play?
Probably a really bad VHS of it somewhere.
Can we crowdsource that from our listeners? No, genuinely, because I struggle to see, like my frame of reference is the movie, of course, so I don't know.
I did it. I performed it over like 280 times, I think, in the end. And then like 10 years later, I did like a 10-year thing of it. It's always in my, it's like one of those things where it's like I remember like an hour and a half of dialogue.
Have you got time to do a private show for Shay, maybe?
Yeah, I'll do a private show. I just still remember the opening bit of the monologue.
Okay, we'll arrange that. It doesn't have to be now, but we'll arrange that another time of private screening.
Yeah. I probably can't get the rights to do it So I probably you probably get sued if I
We'll
say any of it online now. So I have to do a sneaky sideshow.
Yeah, we're doing a private residence.
Yeah.
No one will find out.
I want to link us up to Super City. So 2011, 10 years ago. Such a breakout show. Like such a, I don't know what to say. I just loved it. Like it was so good. It was so new. It was so fresh. But you and Tom, we spoke to Tom about his writing process, but I'm keen to hear about how it all worked. Like Taika's involved and you and Tom, like whose idea was it and how did the foundations of Super City start?
Well, I had been approached by, basically after doing like these plays where I played a lot of characters, and Katerina Denave, who was she was the programming person at TV3, was like, Mads, you need to put this on stage, put this on film. And I was like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. And then got a friend of mine who was a kind of documentary producer at the time, Carth O'Neill, who now, is a hotshot producer. And he was like, well, why don't we just do like a little teaser? And this is kind of like before or around like what Chris Lilly was doing. And then he came up with that and I was like, oh shit, talk about like a collective consciousness in the world. And I had a few characters that I'd been playing. Georgie, the rough sleeper, was a character that I came up with in rehearsal for a play that I was doing. And I just came up with this character because we were rehearsing at Silo near Myers Park, and I decided that I would play this quirky girl who lived at Myers Park who was curious about the rehearsal going on, and I would just turn into this character to amuse my fellow actors. Like Kuta Forrester was in that play. And then everyone slowly encouraged me to be Georgie all the time, so I would get up and do improvs as this, like, basically it was like I just stumbled in from Myers Park and was like, what's happening in here? It was just like so that character came from that rehearsal process. And then I'd always kind of fucked around with like a Pasha style character who kind of taps into, if you're like a mixed race girl and you grew up in the 90s, there were so many girls like that who were just like trying to be white, basically, because there was nothing reflective of us, So I had these like, sorry, my watch is on. I'm just going to mute that. My daughter turned that off. So I had a bunch of characters that I'd been floating around in my head, and we did this like teaser trailer, and then I got Tom involved to kind of help me flesh out a story, and like neither of us had really written TV before, so we sort of got into it. We got funding to do the writing, and we just got into a room together, and basically we were like Googling like, how do you do a 3-act TV show? Where do you put the ad breaks in? Like we're sort of working out how to write a TV show at the same time. And Taika has been a friend of mine for years. Like he was doing, when I was touring number 2, him and Jermaine were like touring Humour Beasts. They're like sort of sketch shows. So we'd often be at, like arts festivals together, and we'd be like, oh, do you want to walk around Christchurch for a bit? Do you want to go and get a pie? It'd be like that sort of vibe. So we'd been friends for years. And then we got the funding to do the show. I was like, well, would you come and direct it? Because I'd love, I knew that our vibe would be good. And yeah, we just got to make this really crazy show, which I just feel like would not be made now. Like it was so dark and edgy and heartbreaking and funny in parts, but also just like sad. And I feel like I look back on that time like, how do we, I just feel like the landscape for TV changed a lot when reality television kind of came in and became a massive thing. I think people didn't want to really invest in experimental, interesting stuff, especially in New Zealand, because it's so hard to like make money for the TV channels. It's so hard for them to make any money from making TV. So, everyone kind of went, well, let's just pivot to making reality TV because it's cheap and people tune in.
How much got left on the cutting room floor of that writer's room with you and Tom? And I've got a follow-up question after that as well.
Tom and I are very naughty people, and we spend a lot of time talking a lot of bullshit. And some of our crazier ideas, for sure, would never have made network television. I mean, some of them are in there, and we could, like, when I look back at what we got away with, I can't believe we did.
This is my follow-up question, is whose gag was the anal eaters with the
that's a Tom Sainsbury. That's got Tom Sainsbury written all over it.
with the gentleman
sure.
with the arseless chaps that come into the workshop.
Yeah, that's definitely a Tom Sainsbury special.
I was rolling around again watching that back on replay, just cracking up. It's good.
Yeah, Ray with the anal eaters. Yeah, no, that was a Tom Sainsbury. Filthy. He's got a filthy brain. Filthy man.
We spoke to Tom in the lead up to this, and he talked about the credit to your craft. He said you spent hours with like the homeless community, the cheerleaders, bodybuilders, in order to, I guess, learn, mimic how they were doing. Is that an exceptionally important part of that process?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we did Super City, like, Ray in season 2 has a bodybuilding partner, and we actually got a woman who does bodybuilding, and, we wanted to be able to represent it respectfully. And so, we're like, we had a lot of like, in season 1 and 2, we had a lot of the real people be the real things. So my cheerleading team was a cheerleading team, and I just had to kind of like muck in and try and like, so there was this element of like where we were kind of, I guess, is that like kind of dogma kind of style of filmmaking where you're like blending reality with what I was doing, just to give it that sort of real depth and, kind of realism, which was kind of a strange thing to do in hindsight. But like that was kind of the vibe, we wanted to kind of like embed me into these communities and follow them around and try and tell a story about them and give a perspective about them and lend that authenticity to it. So, I think it was important in terms of the vibe of the show to kind of feel like we were just watching me be these people, but like it was as real as possible, I guess, and not like a big heightened comedy kind of thing. Like we wanted it to be a bit dramatic sometimes, and we wanted it to be edgy, and we wanted to kind of point out yucky things, and like we wanted to like, with a character like Georgie, who's on paper quite sad because she's a rough sleeper, but she was a clown. She was one of the more optimistic, beautiful characters in that first season, because we didn't want to feel sorry for her. We wanted to just spend time with her, and like we wanted to make sure that like people weren't like sad about her because she's living her best life even if she doesn't have anything, and that was the kind of message of that character, is like, she was trying to be the best she could with that baby she found, like, so we were trying a bunch of things, and
I can pick up on that. Was the review, was the reception, the same as that? Did people pick up on those underlying themes that maybe weren't so explicit?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is going back a bit now, but I think, the response to the show was, really great in that way. Like someone like Pasha, who's just like super deluded. At times you feel like annoyed by her, but also sometimes sorry for her because you like understand why she's, trying to be Paris Hilton even though she's never going to be, or why she's like holding on to this dream of making it, but she's not talented enough. Like there's the kind of juxtaposition of those things does bring out sort of comedy and the drama. I think, people still talk about Super City and stuff, which is great. And, like we wanted to like someone like Uffa in season 2, who's like just a brutal person who works at like Warns, which is our version of Wins. It was that classic kind of thing of like, someone who has gotten to a position of power and then, like many politicians, like who I won't name, who, get, use the system to get into a position of power and then try to take the ladder away, and like having fun with the darkness and the comedy of that, where Uffa is just like on a complete power trip, but she probably grew up on the benefit, you know what I mean? Like, and she's like going, no, I did this myself, and like kind of trying to find comedy in, social issues or political things. I think that was kind of Tom and I's MO, like how can we make this funny, but how can we also like, point out things that people might not like.
Tom gave us an example which might fit this criteria. He said she always wanted to push the envelope. We had one character that had an abortion. She was keen for them to hemorrhage on the dance floor and bleed through her white dress, but the network wasn't having it.
Yeah.
Is that the edgier side of it?
Yeah, totally. I was like, how visually amazing would that be for Pasha to be in a tight white dress and then yeah. I mean, we were trying to push things and obviously we weren't going to get away with that. I've seen that scene in something recently and I'm like, we were trying to do that too. We were before our time, the world wasn't ready.
We spoke to Tom about Small Town Scandal and playing all the parts in a podcast kind of space, and the real estate that you need in your head to do that. You took it one step further earlier I haven't analysed it frame by frame, but are you in almost every shot of the 2 seasons of Super City?
Yeah, pretty much. It was something I didn't think about before we wrote it, and then I was like, oh, fuck. This is going to be so tiring. I remember there was one day we were shooting in season 2 and the network had decided they didn't like the storyline for one character, and we were starting shooting it the next day, and they were like, rewrite it. And so Tom and I and my producer Carthew were sat in a room after a day of shooting. Maybe we're like 2 weeks into shooting. And I was so tired because also my makeup and my hair and stuff for Super City was so a character like Ray is like a full, so I have to get my hair all bound. Then there's a skull cap that goes over the top. Then there's a wig that goes over the top of that. Then there's a beard, a moustache. Then there's all this crazy makeup. Then there's contact lenses for his eyes. And I think we gave him a little pot belly, I'm in a little bit of a suit, and it's the middle of summer in Auckland and I'm shooting the show. But my makeup would be maybe 3 or 4 hours sometimes. So I'm doing these massive long days. And we got to the end of the day, we had to rewrite a whole storyline because we had to have something to shoot the next day. And we were in a meeting kind of trying to write together, Tom, Carthew and I fell asleep. And they just let me fall asleep. And I woke up 20 minutes later and I was like, sorry guys, what are we doing? And Tom was like, it's okay, babe. We've got it. I think we're so. What do you think we should? What do you think about the dialogue for this bit? I was like, I think we should say, So yeah, it was pretty much the most tiring thing I've done. I mean, recently the show that I acted and directed in was pretty tiring because those 2 things require different things of your brain as well. That was probably as close to being as tired as I was during Super City. I mean, there's a reason there's only 2 seasons.
Yeah.
I don't think I could go back to doing that again. It's I learnt to power nap on those shoots. I'd be like, how long have you got lighting? How long have you guys got to set up? 2 minutes? I've got 2 minutes? Okay, cool. And I learned to fall asleep for 2 minutes.
Did your profile explode after that? You're already a big deal, but then you're in the biggest show and you're literally in every scene. Was the demand for you crazy after those seasons?
I would say I would say Sione's wedding was probably the biggest thing and still is up there as one of the biggest things that I've been involved with, in terms of exposure. I think Super City was a bit more niche. It was on a Friday night at 9:30. I think one of the episodes got bumped for the Japanese earthquake. And then another one got bumped for the Super Rugby final. It was just, it was a really kind of niche show on a Friday night. That was it was edgy, so they put it on late, and we swore. I mean, originally Georgie's dog and Super City was called Sad Guy, but for a long time Georgie's dog was Cunt, because we just wanted to be able to Georgie to walk around Auckland being like, Cunt, where are you, cunt? But the network again wouldn't let us get away with that. Are you kidding me?
Amazon Prime don't have a problem with that.
Oh no, not at all. They had to write an essay. They had to write an essay to Amazon Prime, the Deadloch people, to get them to give us cunt, but they backed down. But yeah, I think I don't know. I think Sione's wedding was probably the biggest thing that I got recognised for a long time.
Bit bigger than the Breaker Upperers?
The Breaker Upperers was then for up until that point probably, right. And then the Breaker Upperers, and then various other things.
This might link us up to that. Can you talk to us about the genius of Taika? You've worked with him on a number of projects, very close. we see him as this worldwide like star and director, and he's like the hottest property. But what is it specifically about? Is it his work ethic, his eye, his drive? Like what makes him stand out?
I think it's all those things. Like he just has he just goes and goes. Like that guy, you talk about like me having projects on the go, guys like me on, acid. He's always got, he's never like satisfied, Taika. He's just constantly he's constantly making work, and he's just really good at knowing what is funny, and he is very live all the time. Like he's always like, looking for ways to make things funnier or better. And, like I learned a lot as a director, being directed by him. He grew up again like in a kind of environment where there was a lot of improv and a lot of like, he would make work with his friends, and like, he's a very live performer. Like when he directs, there's a lot of improv involved all the time. And I don't know, I think like with Taika, it's like not being married to a script too much, and being in the moment and in the scene. And like when we did Breaker Uppers, like Jackie and I, and Jackie grew up around Taika as well. Like we all kind of grew up with the same sort of philosophy of like, going on your gut and knowing when something feels good and feels funny. And if it doesn't, try something else, try a different option. Taika, when he directs, he often just yells out options at you, and he'll crack you up and you'll crack him up. And, I think the experience of doing Super City with him was like that. It was like just jamming with him on the dialogue sometimes and coming up with better options. And I think that's what comedy's about, is about like sort of giving yourself options, because then when you get into an edit, you're like, well, I've got this gag that could be good, or this gag's funny or whatever. I think he's a genius in that way. He has a good time. He makes people feel good. He makes people feel like they're important and what they have to offer is important. I think he does that like not only with just like actors, but like across the board with crew and stuff as well. And I think he just has a good time, and he knows what good comedy is. And so it's a joy to be around that energy, and that's why I think he's become so successful. But he also does sit down and do the work. Like he'll be the guy where, like he's like, I stayed up all night, wrote a script, like he's that guy too, and so yeah, he's fun to be around, but he also works really hard, and he plays hard, he works hard. He's a good boy.
Corey Gonzalez McCure shared a little story and insight into the world of Taika, which none of us were aware, which is around what we do in the shadows, the press tour. You got invited to parties and bits and pieces. Did he invite you and Jackie to a party in LA shortly after you arrived?
Yeah, we were editing the Breaker Uppers, and he was there doing promo for Jojo Rabbit, actually. Jojo Rabbit. And we like literally just got off the plane. We went and met him for a beer. And it was really funny because I think this was post Thor, and I'd like spent a lot of time in LA with Taika, and no one knew who we were at all. And then all of a sudden, it was the first time I was in LA with Taika, and I was like, oh, he's really famous now. Everyone knows who Taika is. This is so crazy. And so we're sitting there at this bar that we used to go to all the time, and everyone's like, Taika, can we get you anything? Blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh my God, dude, your life has changed. And he's like, yeah, do you want to come to a party? I was literally in the overalls that I probably stunk like plane, no makeup, in the overalls that I wore on the plane. I was like, oh yeah, we'll go. It'll be a house party or something. And we end up at like the Chateau Marmont or something. And it's Seth MacFarlane's 40th birthday. And I'm like, Taika, come on. Jackie and I are just like, this is hilarious. Paris Hilton's there. And she's like, hey, what do you guys do? And I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. He's like chatting to Leo DiCaprio. It's nuts. No, that's just his life now.
When you've got Leo DiCaprio at your party, you're doing right, eh?
Yeah.
That's
Seth MacFarlane's party there. But Taika's got the sway to bring +2. That's cool.
Yeah, I don't know how he winged that, but I genuinely thought we were just going to go to someone's house, and I was like, Taika, come on, man, I would have had a shower, bro. Like, honestly, Leo DiCaprio, I was hey man, how's it going? I'm sorry I stink like plane.
That's a vibe. That's a vibe to even kind of try and put your finger on it.
It's hilarious because like when you're at a party like that, like no one gives a shit about the two Kiwis that no one knows that have no makeup on that smell like plane. Like except for Paris Hilton, actually. She was the one person that said hi and was interested in us, and I will always be like, Paris Hilton is cool.
In some of those moments, do you ever like pull Taika to the side and go, fuck, remember we were just knocking about down in Wellington on the tour? Like, are they pinch yourself moments with him? Have you got the ability with him to kind of pull him back down to earth? Not that I'd imagine he's out of.
No, I mean, I think he's in another sphere for sure. Like, but he's still the dork that I knew walking around Christchurch, talking shit at some arts festival in 1999 or something.
It's a hell of a contact on your cell phone as well to be able to just every now and again drop a message of, hey bro, what are you up to? Or I'm thinking about doing this, or please stop sending me those TikTok recommendations.
Yeah, he's often sends a lot of TikToks, but they're good. He's funny.
What's his algorithm saying?
I don't know.
What sort of stuff are you getting?
I don't know. He sends funny stuff. But no, I've known that guy for a long time, and he's still that guy. He's just in this crazy world of making massive movies now. But he's still a dad, and he's still like a dork.
Breaker Uppers was a massive movie as well, right? Is it still in the New Zealand top 10?
I don't know. I haven't checked in on that. But it was cool. It was like Jackie and I have been friends for years, and we'd been in plays and stuff together, but we were like, she came up with this idea for this movie, and I was like, fuck yeah, that would be great. And she was like, do you want to write it with me? And I was like, of course. So we wrote it over a number of years, sort of on and off, and then we didn't want to direct it initially. We wanted to be in it and write it, and then we were sort of cutting together this trailer. Well, no, actually, I can't remember what we were doing, but basically we wanted to get like someone like Taika or Jermaine to direct us in it, but they were both busy at the time. I think Taika was doing like some movie, Thor, maybe, some crazy indie art house film called Thor, and they were both like, why don't you just do it? And we'd both worked on What We Do in the Shadows and kind of seen how they operated, and we were like, oh yeah, okay. And then we did a trailer for the Film Commission because they kind of wanted to test us, and we were like, yeah, this could be good. So we directed ourselves in this crazy movie. It was a really short shoot because we didn't have that much money.
Yeah, what blows my mind is like 4 years to write it.
Yeah.
And test it and get it to a place where you want to make it. And then 4 weeks to make it?
Yeah. And it was hilarious because the original like drafts of the Breaker Uppers were like crazy, like big set pieces with like boats and jumping off boats and then like escaping to an island, and then my producer was like, yeah guys, this is going to have a New Zealand movie budget, you're going to have to find a more clever way to, and so then we leaned into the kind of hokiness of the concept as opposed to trying to be like, this is not a Melissa McCarthy film where you're going to have like millions of dollars, you're going to have like maybe two, and that's going to be barely enough to do any of this shit. So we sort of had to be more lean into the comedy and the kind of hokiness of this, like, the job that these ladies do. And yeah, we filmed it in, I think, 23 days or something like that. And we were just, we were really happy with it. We had a really good time. We got all of our friends involved, all of our most talented, like, funny friends. Try to give everyone in New Zealand a part in our film.
That's what I was going to say. I watched it back the other night, and the first like 10 or 15 minutes, there's just everyone in the New Zealand comedy scene.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. Like, it was literally like that. It was like, Oscar, what are you doing tomorrow, bro? Can you just come in? Like, we just need 15 minutes, honestly. And you just know it'll be gold. And everyone has done that for everyone over the years. So like, you call in all those favors. You're like, bro, remember when I came in and I did that little part for you? And can you come in, please? Just 15 minutes, bro, please. Oh, yeah, it'll be funny. It'll be fun. We'll have fun. You might get a free lunch. Yeah. So we just called her, and Lucy came in and did a little part. It's just so funny.
Jermaine's doing the sex scene.
Jermaine,
Jermaine, rooting away.
Yep. Jackie was like, I'm pretty sure I can get Jermaine to have sex with me on camera. And yeah, we just sort of put it out. And we sort of, the success of that film was really a surprise to us. Like, we were just genuinely hoping that we'd get a New Zealand release and that New Zealanders would watch it. And then we got accepted into South by. And then I think, the fact that Taika had really, I think with Thor especially, I remember flying over to Austin on the plane and watching Thor, because I had a young child at the time, so I didn't get to go out to the movies much, and Thor was on the plane. I watched it, and I remember being like blown away by how much Taika-ness, how much Kiwi comedy was in that film. And I was like, oh, that's what people are responding to. And then to then do our film and be like, I was sitting in the audience in Austin going, oh, weird that our film, which is a very Kiwi film, very Kiwi sense of humour, is going to be seen by Americans first, and I got kind of nervous for the first time because I was like, how are they going to respond to this? And then the laughter was insane. And the commentary afterwards, we did Q&As and stuff, was like, this is New Zealand comedy. You guys are doing New Zealand comedy. It was like, oh yeah, because that's what they saw in like Thor, and that's what they love in Thor, and that's what it reminds them of Flight of the Conchords, and there's this brand now of like New Zealand comedy, and it's like dry. And I think one of the reviews was like, awkward, dry comedy. That's like our style. And they were like loving it. And so then it kind of took off after that, and we got to open the Sydney Film Festival, and we got sold the film to Netflix, and it was just it was very unexpected. We genuinely were just like, oh, this is cool. I didn't know people were going to like this that much. This is sick.
When you sell it to Netflix, from the outside, everyone thinks, oh, they've cracked it. They've sold it to Netflix for this movie. But there's lots of ways that money's broken up, right? Like you got to pay the investors first before.
Yeah. But I mean, like you get the money to make your film, and then you kind of make deals with distributors, and there's all this kind of structure where basically you're kind of bottom of the food chain because which is fair, because like all these other people are investing money in your thing, and they spend the money to get it out there, and so they have to get their money out first. And then it's not like a huge big fancy paycheck. It's not like, hey, we've won lotto, but it was still I think our film broke even. I don't think we lost money, which is a win. But yeah, it's a funny little world. I mean, I don't really know much about the financial ins and outs. I'll leave that to my producer Kathy. he loves the numbers.
Yeah,
it's like Steven. Steven's a real numbers guy.
Ask the numbers.
Yeah, but it is interesting, and it's one of those things where like, I've learned a little bit about it, but yeah, people assume that, hell, you've cracked it. Yeah. You must be loaded now. It's like, no, I'm back to square one. Yeah. But hey, we didn't lose any money, and I'm not having to mortgage my house to pay for my movie or whatever.
The overall experience, was that an enjoyable one? The whole 4-year kind of process of forming it and then doing it and then...
The best. It was the best. Like, I mean, Jackie's one of my best friends. We're born on the same day. And, we love it. So to get to make a movie with one of your best friends and for then people to love it, like it doesn't get much better than that. We're working on another one at the moment.
Hello.
We joked when we were in South by because we just like talk shit in all of our interviews, and we joked that we would like come up with a trilogy of buddy movies, and then we haven't really backed it up. We've gone off and done other things, and we got agents, and like everyone's like blowing smoke up your ass after you have like a great review in Vanity Fair or whatever, and so we got these new agents, and they were like, come to LA. We had like 28 meetings in 3 days. We had this guy drive us around to all the studios and to meet all these people. And they're all pitching stuff like, oh, well, what about the Cluedo movie? They're all basically trying to pitch us to make a movie out of a board game. And they were like, what's your next thing? And we'd literally just come out of editing our film. We were like, we have no idea what our next thing is. But Jackie and I, in between meetings, would be like, should we just like start bullshitting some stuff to some people? Because like they're all asking what our next movie could be. And so, as a way of kind of amusing ourselves as well, because we're like, we're never going to make this film, whatever, we can just talk shit. And then there was one thing that I came up with. It was like 2 good ideas that accidentally ended up being good ideas. And there was one that I came up with that we sort of just, kind of kept to ourselves really. We didn't share them in the meetings. And then we were both, over the years, we've both kind of gone, I think that's got legs. And then we wrote a treatment for it recently. And we were like, we just need to get started on that. That's a good, funny idea. And it's just kind of stuck around. So we just got early development for that from the Film Commission. So we're going to start writing that as well soon. So there'll be another, because we're like, it's time, bro. We need to do another we need another little buddy comedy.
Is that how it starts? Is literally just a funny idea and it just builds out from there?
Yeah, there's all these like really hilarious like classic like writery things. You can find them on the internet. Write advice from writers. Like one of the things that like, in the time, like say when I was with Tom and we're looking up how to write a TV show, and we did a fair amount of that when Jackie and I were writing our film too, because neither of us had written. She'd done a lot of short films, but neither of us had written a feature film before, and it's quite a different process and different structure to writing a TV show, because a TV show you have like an episode per episode, and then you kind of have an overall arc if you want, or there's different ways of writing it. Whereas a movie is like one episode of TV stretched out with a lot more detail, and you have to have like kind of bigger high points and low points. And one of the really good like grains of advice that I saw in those times trying to learn how to write a film was like, when you put together a submission to get funding for a film, they make you write like a log line, so like a 1-sentence thing of what your film is about, and then they make you write a paragraph to describe the film, and then you write sometimes like a 10 to 15 page treatment, which is like a more detailed thing of the story, and then based on that, then you get funding to write your film. And one of the best pieces of advice was like, with a log line, if you like casually mention your log line to someone, say you're out with mates and you're having a beer, and you can test your log line with people, and if they are like, whoa, that's great, or you could do this, you could do that, it's often a good sign that you're onto like a good movie. Because if you can, and like when we were doing the breaker-uppers, it was definitely one of those things where we're like, oh, it's about two women that break up couples for cash, and everyone would just be like, whoa, no. And so Jackie and I would be like, it feels good, and they give you this kind of excitement every time. And
were you testing your log line with us with the rugby thing? Because
that's a good one.
Because it worked.
Okay.
Yeah, I was into it.
Yeah, well, it's so, and this new one that Jackie and I are doing, I think it's one of those ones where the log line never went away. Like, it kept us both excited about the comedy of it, and like, every time I'd think back to that, or we'd sit in a room together and be like, what about that movie? The ideas would flow really easily, and it's always a good sign when the ideas flow that you should pursue that as a thing to write. Sometimes, you come up with a log line, you're like, I don't know, I think it's dead in the water. I don't think there's nothing more juicy coming from that. So yeah, that's a good little trick there.
Nice.
It's a good trick out there for the writers.
Yes. I'm keen to link you up to sort of current day. Deadloch has just come out, done the media tour for it. And interesting story, because you wrote it and then auditioned for the role and kind of didn't really think you were going to get it, and then got it.
Disclaimer, please don't spoil it, because I'm up to episode 4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Your partner's just been eaten by a crocodile.
Oh, mate, I know. Bushy.
Sorry, I feel like you've just spoiled it for anyone who's not up to episode 4.
We can edit that back out.
Eaten by a croc. So I started out as a writer on the show. I've known the Cates for years. They asked me actually many years ago to direct one of so they did web series for a while, and we had the Skype back when we used Skype just before Breaker-Uppers, and they asked for me to come and direct them in the show Get Cracking, which is like a piss take of morning TV, and I instantly fell in love with them. I was like, oh my god, these women are hilarious, and their sense of humor and everything. But then we got funding for Breaker-Uppers, so the timing didn't work. And then through the years, I sort of became friends with them both online. Like, we'd like pen pals, online pen pals.
In your Bebo top 5.
Yeah, my Bebo top 5. My MySpace top 8. And then I think what happened, I would do little parts in their things. Rachel House and I did a little part where we recorded some sort of live cross to them in Australia for their morning TV show. We played a couple of characters doing some weird story, and I never met them in real life. And then the pandemic happened. They got the funding to do Deadloch, and they were like, would you write an episode? And I think initially they asked if Jackie and I could do it together, but then Jackie had something else to do. And I was like, I have got to make this work. Like, it's been too long. I need to work with these women. I just will follow them wherever they go. I think they're geniuses. And so I started writing on it, but it was like during the pandemic, during COVID, so it was all virtual writers' rooms, and it was just kind of online back and forth. And then the opportunity to audition for it came up, and I thought it was a joke. I thought they were playing a prank on me. I was like, what the fuck, you guys? This is a joke. And they're like, nah, mate, nah, we've been thinking about you. And it's funny too, because when you're writing, you sort of have an idea of the character in your head, and it definitely didn't look like me, Eddie, in my head. I thought it was like some really, aged, I think even in the scripts originally she was described as like this kind of aged white woman with like, rosacea, and like, she definitely had too many beers the night before every,
Like, I got that role. Oh, okay.
I just imagine this like leathery kind of really ochre like woman, like the kind who's just got like a parrot that she yells at, and she's always smoking cigarettes on a porch. And then so I auditioned for both the leads, and I went in. And I really focused on the other character, because I was like, oh man, I think I might want to play the queer character, who's a bit straight. I think that'd be kind of a cool challenge. So I didn't put any effort into the Eddie audition. I went in, I had papers like that, and I was reading the script off the page and just kind of throwing it all away. And apparently that was perfect energy for the part.
Genius.
Yeah, because it got me the part. I didn't give a shit, and that was the energy I needed.
That's the lesson.
Yeah,
it's great energy. Like it's I've not again. I feel like I've blown smoke up your ass twice today, but I fucking love it. It's an amazing show. Great concept. It's kooky. It's got kind of White Lotus vibes to it as well. I really, really enjoy it. I'm trying not to binge it in like a day, but
it's been an amazing response to it. I mean, I think as a writer, when I was working on it, I was like, how are these two genres going to work? Because surely one will, trump the other, or like, how do you make it funny but then also keep the suspense going? And I think what the Kates ended up doing, because in the end, I mean, with the writing of it, they ended up realizing, because they brought a bunch of writers on, and then it was kind of the process was interesting in that, like, I was writing episode 5 and I'd write to, like a treatment, write that out. And then by the time they got to give me notes, they'd given notes on eps 1 to 4. And so many things had to change because of the crime story. And you're having to kind of put the intricate pieces of this crime story into place. So then I was having to write a completely different episode 5. And so I did a couple of drafts, and then the Kates pretty much realized, they were like, oh, we have to write this whole thing because we're the only ones that have it all in here. And we can't, like each writer can't know what's changing in each episode. So they basically ended up kind of like writing the whole thing in the end. And that was good for me because I ended up trying to, focus on the acting side of things. But I think they did a really good job of making a really thrilling, suspenseful crime show that also has so much comedy in it. And then like underneath that, all the layers of like political commentary as well. And it's kind of a new genre, I guess, or what they've done. It's quite, and I think it was really funny, the response to the show. Initially, like a lot of people, like, it's quite hard for them to, because some people are watching it because they've been told it's a crime show, and then my character comes along and they're like, what the fuck's going on here? Like, what show are we in now? Because Dulcie's so serious and then my character's such a kook. And then some people are watching it for the comedy and are like, the crime's jarring for them. So it's like, and then as the sort of show gets on and you're like about halfway through, it just gets more sort of tense.
Yeah. End of episode 3 last night was tense. It really was. The other thing as well, similarities to, I hate drawing too many comparisons to the White Lotus, but any show where there's a cock and balls in like the first 5 minutes of episode 1
hooks you in.
It really does.
It really tells you what the show's going to be, I think, in the first like 5 minutes of Deadloch. It's like these.
I was like, oh, okay.
How graphic, full.
Yeah.
Oh, you can make out everything,
Yeah. It's. I mean, I think what's so clever about the show is that it takes this genre that we all know well, and it upends so much of it, so many of the stereotypes. So you're kind of in it and taking the piss out of it. And then you're also somehow along for a really thrilling like murder mystery as well. So you're like, it's kind of very clever, the layering of what the Kates have done. And I think they're geniuses, and everyone should give them all the money to make whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah, they're very good. I just spent the drive up from Hamilton this morning working through the suspect list. I'm trying to be very tiptoey around ruining it for anybody.
Yeah.
But the suspect list now, going, I wonder if it was, or maybe it could be. So, I'm hooked.
Yeah.
I'm all in.
And the end of Ep 3 is so good for that, too, because you're just like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, shit.
Okay, that changes the dynamic.
Is there a weird feedback loop? Because you got double parked out as well, and it takes people a while, obviously, to get through shows.
Yeah.
So is it kind of just like trickle through to you every day? Someone else like, oh, I just finished a show. Amazing.
Yeah.
Is it kind of a weird...
There was like an explosion over the weekend, I think, of people finishing Deadloch. And, there's like an obsessive... there's been a really excessive explosion of like love for the show and those characters, and there's like fanfic and there's like artwork every day, and like
really,
that's cool.
It's really cool. Yeah, it's really cool.
And you hear, I mean, people talking about it. People say, "Oh shit, that sounds good." And
and a lot of people, I think a lot of people are sort of waiting for all the episodes to drop as well. And so there's new people watching it every day, so my mentions are like going nuts. But there's a real like, yeah, there's so much love for the show. It's so cool. And yeah, Double Parked again is like at a different sort of level. But yeah, I think it's also the two shows, I guess. I mean, there's not a lot in common with with either of them. Double Parked is a very different show, just me playing quite different characters. But I think that, you know, people, for there to be that kind of representation, I think is really important for people. So there's definitely like, they're both refreshing in that way, and that we're seeing like a different perspective, different perspective on something. You know, on Deadloch side, it's like the people that are usually the victims are not in Deadloch. You know, they're usually the victims in these shows, and they're not. And it's like telling the story from that perspective. And then Double Parked is like, you usually see a show about a heterosexual couple having a baby instead of a lesbian couple having two at once. And, you know, so I think it's refreshing storytelling on both sides, and I think that's what people are responding to.
Just, you dropped your mentions in there. What sort of numbers do you get every day on a mention? Because they'll blow up after this podcast.
I'm not a real like on Twitter type person, but I've been like tapping into the Deadloch hashtag just to see what people are saying. And yeah, it's pretty funny. There's some pretty funny fans out there. But yeah, I don't know. I sort of have this love-hate relationship with social media, and I've kind of for years wanted to be the person that's just gets to not be on it. And then I think when Breaker Uppers came out, my producer was like, "You have to have something. You have to promote the movie somehow." And I was like, "Okay, well, fine. I got rid of Facebook a really long time ago. Like maybe I've been Facebook free for." My name is Madeleine, and I was addicted to Facebook. No, I've been Facebook. That was the most toxic for me, and I just was like, I hated it so much. So I got rid of that. And then I've got like Instagram and Twitter, but I'm barely on them really.
A couple of our reach outs to you have fallen on deaf ears to get some intel on previous guests. So you're clearly not that.
Yeah.
I don't expect you to be. We're always grateful if we do get
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like I don't know. I just get overwhelmed,
I
bet. But it's, you know, it's nice with like, you know, I think I go through phases. Like it's nice when the show's out and people are sending really lovely messages, and you know, like I'm getting messages about Double Parked where they're like, it's so nice to have a story like this where it's not like there's no trauma. These are just two normal people, like a gay story, but it's not like doesn't have to be like a coming out thing or like a traumatic kind of triggering story. You know, it's just like funny and relatable and. You know, it's nice to kind of have that like interaction on that level, but I'll probably escape from the digital realm as soon as these shows are die down a little bit.
And this podcast.
Yeah, the profile is big at the moment. You're everywhere. The good and the bad. And feel free to swerve this one if you want. But you recently had a high profile breakup, and there was like an Instagram post and a public acknowledgement. Like, is it hard feeling like you have to do that and you have to let people into your personal situation?
Yeah, I mean, I've never been someone that's wanted to talk about my personal life that much because I think back in the day it used to be way worse. I think I think the one positive thing I'll say about like Instagram and Twitter and things like that is it's put the power back into the hands of the people whose story it is, because you know, like, you know, before the when it was all like paparazzi stuff, but now like celebrities willingly give their lives up. And everyone does. It's not like it's an even playing field. Like every person has their own Instagram. Everyone's their own star of their own lives if they want to be. You know, if you want to get involved on Instagram in that way. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, for Pip and I, we accepted that. You know, even when we got married, there was like people trying to do flyovers of our wedding, and we're like, really? You know, people chasing Taika around the farmers in Masterton. Really? Trying to see what he was buying.
Did you put your guest registry in farmers? Is that?
No, I mean, we had a journalist like just walk into the venue and be like, what's going on? And we didn't even think about like security or anything like that. We didn't think people would be interested at all. Who cares? But slow news day. So yeah, I think Pip and I, you know, sort of accepted that there'd be an element of interest there. And because I had all this stuff coming out as well, and, you know, but people have been really cool, you know. And I think the fact that we could do it in that way, where it's like, you know, she could make a statement, and she called me and was like, is this cool? And I like sent her what I was going to write, and I was like, is this cool? And like, we just like, you know, make sure that we're both happy with the message that we're putting out. And yeah, I mean, I think it's just part of life that you have to kind of accept when you have a sort of public profile. But yeah, you know, and it does feel different in that I don't think it's like spawned a bunch of articles. It doesn't feel great to be exposed in that way, you know. It doesn't feel, you know, it's a vulnerable time for everyone. And then when like, you know, when it's in stuff or whatever, and you're like, ugh, you know, really, do we care? I don't really. Do we give a shit? Come on.
Yeah.
But you know,
I wondered about that, like the choreography of it, knowing that you kind of, you know, you got to make your statement or whatever, but it's gonna be news within minutes. It's gonna be headlines on like New Zealand's biggest websites.
I think the fact that it's not like the old days where someone's just found out and then does a big article about it and you didn't have any opportunity to, you know, say it in your way. I think the fact that we both got to say what we wanted to say in our own way, that we both knew what was coming out, like, I think that is the difference now, because it's from us,
yes.
You know, and even though it's kind of with reluctance, because you should be able to do it privately, and not have to feel like you need to do that. But at the same time, it's kind of part of the job. You know, you have to accept that you do have some sort of profile. People are going to talk about it. You might as well be the one saying it in your own words as opposed to someone else just speculating or whatever, you know. So it's sort of, in that way, it does, you know, it's not fun. It's not fun to feel that exposed and vulnerable, but it's kind of part of the job, I guess, and there's a curiosity there. And, you know, the great thing about that whole scenario is that the response and the comments and stuff for both of us have just been really loving and supportive, and so in a way it's been really nice as well, you know. But
this was sort of a couple of weeks, 3 or 4 weeks ago.
It's an interesting time lag, and I'm curious, not to kind of stick around in that area, but around you film or you produce a body of work and then it's released away down the track, and then you're already working, by the sounds of it, on a number of other things as well. Is that kind of a curious thing to kind of park it, wrap it, do it?
It's so weird.
And then dip back into it and be like, yeah, and I drew this inspiration from the character when you're already working on something else.
It's so weird. Like coming back to Deadloch especially, because that was a really long post schedule. So like we finished shooting in June last year.
Wow.
And then it was released in June this year. So it's a year. And you just get amnesia. Like I was like, I was so tired on that shoot. You know, the first week of Deadloch, I think I was running through the Australian bush in my reef sandals.
In one of them or two of them?
One
Sorry,
of them.
spoiler.
One of them. One of them.
You guys.
Yeah, I think one of them or two of them. But like I was just, you know, so, and it was like similar to, I mean, that's definitely, this is the longest shoot I've ever been on. It's the longest time I've ever played one character. It was a similar kind of exhaustion to say doing something like Super City, which was a shorter shoot but more intense, whereas Deadloch was a longer shoot but just about as intense. I mean, Kate Box, who plays Dulcie in the show, is incredible. Like the two of us were barely ever not on. So like all the other characters will be like, oh, we're going to go, we're driving to the beach for 2 days. We're going to go like to this amazing beach in Tasmania. Me and Boxy would be like, fuck you guys, man. Like it was an intense shoot. But then you go off, you do other shows, and then you come back and then you have to start talking about it. You're like, what do we do? I can't even remember. Like, what's the show again? But they sent us a bunch of episodes to watch before we had to do publicity, so we could kind of get back into the mindset of like, oh yeah, that's right, we did that on that day. It's crazy.
Yeah, do you watch it in its entirety after you've filmed it or after you've lived it?
So they sent us 7 episodes because we had to go and do some sort of extra filming for Amazon. Amazon have this thing called X-Ray. It's like extra content on their website. So they sent us 7 episodes. They didn't want to send us F8 because it wasn't ready in their special effects and stuff. We want you to see it in all its glory. So we got to watch it earlier in the year, but there were these like links that would expire, and like, you know, you must, if you watch them now, then it will, you know, it's like Mission Impossible, they will explode. So I got to see the show earlier this year, and I was like, oh shit, this is really good. And then, but I hadn't seen F8 until the weekend.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I saved myself to watch that. It was pretty cool.
Cool.
I'm going to start wrapping us up. Thank you so much. This has been so cool. My last question is, what a week, and I know you're writing a script at the moment and you've got that, but like, what does a day in the life of Madeleine Sami look like at the moment? Like, are you early riser? Do you sleep in?
I'm a terrible sleeper. But yeah, I'm generally an early riser. I mean, it's a bit, I'm like have just done a raft of like jobs and publicity, so I'm in like this kind of like trying to get into a writing zone at the moment, which is tricky. But yeah, I mean, generally I get up and try to pump it.
Yeah.
Try to do my Chris Hemsworth workout.
Hello.
Hi Chris. Trying to get ripped like Chris. I do like a little half-hour workout, and then I usually go for a walk. Then I break my fast, have some eggs, try and do some writing. I mean, that's generally when I'm in this sort of zone what I would do. Come and do a podcast.
Do a long form. Do a 5-hour
do a
podcast
5-hour
and tell my whole life story.
Tell my whole life story.
Dip back into the recesses of my life.
Yeah, I mean, it's often in a day I'll give like a voice job or do something like that. But like at the moment, I'm going to try and get into like a bit of a structure for doing some writing, which is often not structured at all. So we'll see how we go. And I end up writing the whole thing a week before it needs to be handed in.
Deadline.
Working through the night, through the day, drinking a lot of
pressure.
coffee. Yeah, deadline pressure is good. Yeah.
Awesome. Any last bits before we wrap?
Do you have a favourite, what do you call it, discipline out of everything that you do? Writing, acting, singing, just being general busyness?
I think the variety is what I like. I was really into songwriting last year. So I wrote a bunch of songs and got my sisters hyped to do another Sami Sisters record. But that's just where my brain was like wanting to put my creative energy. And then Deadloch was the first time I'd done acting in a long time. And I hadn't sort of unofficially retired, but I'd done a lot of like writing and directing, and I kind of felt like I liked that a lot more. And then getting to play a character like Eddie in Deadloch was such a joy and kind of brought me back to this old Mads who loved doing that. And then last year I was doing acting to the point where my acting agents were literally like, Mads, what's with all this acting? Which is a hilarious question for your acting agents to be saying, because they'd known that I kind of moved on to like directing. But like this year I've been doing a lot more. I mean, I did acting and directing for Double Parked, but like then I went over to Australia and shot a couple of episodes of Gold Diggers, and then I've got a big job starting towards the end of the year, which is just directing like 4 episodes of TV. So I think for me, it's the variety that I really like. And I think each of those things teaches me about the other thing. So like doing a voice job, like I did, there's a period of my life where I wasn't getting a lot of acting work, but I was doing a lot of voice work. And I was like, it wasn't necessarily like feeding my soul, but I learnt a lot about like mic technique. And when I go and do ADR for a TV show now, I've got this like experience from doing all that voice work from all those years. Or like even like singing with my sisters, like, you learn, like I feel like I find like I take lessons from all of these jobs, even like the Kinder Surprise Egg, I've probably taken some life lesson from that Kinder Surprise Egg that one time in Auckland Zoo.
I hear you.
Cool.
But yeah, I think variety is good. And I think in New Zealand, like, it's a small place. You have to kind of vary up what you're doing. You guys will have experienced that in life as well. It's like you got to be able to be a jack of all trades here, because it's not always like there's a bunch of work in one way, So yeah.
My last point is just a little tip of the cap to your love of In Living Colour. Friday nights was like appointment viewing for me growing up.
Yes.
I'm a couple of years younger than you, but I was like, have to stay up, have to watch the Jim Carrey impersonations.
Yes.
The guy that was in the background. It was such good TV.
Yeah. It was a double. I'd go and stay at my cousin's house. There was a double feature. It was absolutely fabulous. And then I think In Living Colour was afterwards. And I was like, sometimes when people ask about like my sense of humor and where does it come from, I'm like raw, delirious,
Yeah.
ab fab, and In Living Colour.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Three
Jim Carrey,
out of 4 I've got with you there.
But it's like, that was such a good, like British, and I feel like if I looked at my taste, I'm like, British comedy and American comedy is like a mixture of those things. And now New Zealand, that's our classic New Zealand. But yeah, In Living Colour is great. I found a In Living Colour T-shirt on eBay, which is one of my prized possessions.
Nice.
And whenever I wear it, people like fans come out of the woodworks. So it was such a good sketch show.
It was amazing.
And it holds up well.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably some problematic shit in there, but there always will be. But like there's still some such funny things. And Jim Carrey was just like incredible in that show as well. And J-Lo was backup dancer.
It was a fly girl. Fly girl they were.
J-Lo was a fly girl, just like dancing in the background. It's like J-Lo's like the biggest star in the world now. So there's a lot of like amazing people that came out of that show.
Yeah, great
And
show.
also, like Ab Fab for me was like women behaving badly. It was one of the first shows where women just got to be a bit shit,
Yeah.
you know, and like it was revolutionary in that way to just watch, you know, even though I can't quite relate to these, I shouldn't be able to relate to these like drunk rich women, like, but they were taking the piss out of that, and then they were also just kind of awful and funny at the same time, and I don't know, it was pretty cool.
Nice.
Hey, this has been such a cool lit. Thank you so much
Thanks,
for coming in and
guys.
giving us your time.
Yeah, no worries.
It's been so fun, entertaining, and inspiring. But it's no surprise you are where you are after hearing your story. Like, thank you so much for all the detail you've given us.
Oh, anytime.
Listeners are going to love it. But I'll throw to the outro guy over here.
Yeah, like a really relatable for me personally, and I reflect now as I get older, like brown faces that you've seen growing up is really important. And you mentioned variety, like the variety of work that you've done in terms of like the stage stuff, the TV stuff, the big screen, the directing, like it's incredible outputs. And it is, like Stephen said, it's really inspiring to spend time with someone and kind of hear the hustle and the grind behind the scenes. But also, I just want to acknowledge like the intimate side of your story that you shared, reflections on the loss of your father and the breakdown of your relationship and how you've managed and handled those. I think those are two really important lessons to come out of this episode, as well as an encouragement for people to just check out everything that you've done over the years and everything that you'll do in the future as well, because I'm sure it's going to be amazing. So
Oh, thanks,
thank you
man.
very much.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers, Madeleine.